And we are live. Yay. Here we are once again for another English Hacks live stream every Sunday from 11:30 to 1:30 California time. So, and all right, so Random Characters is already here asking some random questions. Atroxylon is here. Welcome, welcome. So let me get through these really quick. Okay, so birthday, I've talked about birthday before. And yes, remember that for the TH, so the voiceless TH we can replace with a dental T, birth, birth, birth. And then because we're already there, in this one special case, if there's a T or a D after it, we can do that normal T or D from that dental position, only if it follows a TH that's being changed into the dental T or D. So we'll go into a dental T and then push out a dental D, birthday, birthday, birthday. Fully enunciated birthday, you have to do a regular D, regular TH, but birthday is a very common pronunciation. Nothing wrong with it. It's not informal. Very good. Yes, perfect. Exactly what you said there. It sounds more natural and easier to say if you say D in day as a dental D. TH can be fully enunciated, voiceless TH. Exactly. Everything that I just explained. Perfect. You can also slide your tongue from TH into a weak D. Well, it wouldn't necessarily be a weak D. So birthday would have double stress. Birth is the primary stress, but it wouldn't be like a it's not like birthday, because then you're putting too much stress. So it's kind of a gray area. It's like, as long as it's not stronger than birth, then it's okay. Birthday, birthday. If it were really weak, it would probably be like birthday, 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 because then we wouldn't give remember the what creates the strong or the weak stop sound at the start of a word, T, D, P, whatever, is because of the stress. So if you try to make it too weak, you're going to de-stress the whole syllable, and day still does need to get secondary stress. So it is going to bump up a little bit. But if I say it fast, it comes out as dental T for TH and dental D for day. Normally, yeah, no problem. Exactly. Okay. Okay. Watch the band hammer roll around, yeah. Yay, we're live. Hi, chat. Yes, Random Characters. Hi, chat. Maguaz, welcome. I didn't know we had the same time zone. Apparently we do. So I guess it's 11:32 a.m. where you are. Yeah, that happens. If you want me to turn it down, let me know. Well, I mean, you're fine, I think. But yeah, obviously YouTube is kind of sensitive about stuff. I don't want to lose my monetization for this, for the playback. So yeah, be careful or you will be banned. Fernando, welcome, welcome, welcome. Random Characters is just schmoozing with everybody today. In the sentence, I'm gonna go to the beach. I use flap T in go to, but then I also use a flap T in the when I'm speaking fast. Okay, good question. So number one, remember there is no such thing as a flap T. It does not exist because then it would be a T sound. And when we flap, it's voiced. It's a D sound. So I always feel that's important to mention because we need to focus on the sounds, not the letters. Flap T does not exist. So yeah, when you do it with goda, or even godu, I'm going to go to the beach. You don't have to actually reduce u to although we usually will. It will flap most of the time. Yes, that's perfectly fine. And then you say you also use the flap in the. Okay, you cannot use a flap for a TH. The flap only exists for, in terms of letters, it would be for a T or a D. But of course, we know in American English, if we have the conditions to trigger the flap, regardless of how it's spelled, it's a flapped D sound. So it can only be used for T's and D's in the right situation, which would be at the start of an unstressed syllable between two vowels, which includes if it links between words, and there's a vowel before and after it as well. If I were to try to say that, let's see. I'm gonna go to the beach. Go to da. No, that sounds. I'm gonna go to the beach. Go to the beach. That sounds either like you're a child, or I'm gonna go to the beach. If we're playing around with the language and we're intentionally doing that to kind of sound kind of funny, maybe kind of uneducated in a way, then yeah, you could do it. But normally, no, you wouldn't. And if there are any speakers that have regional dialects that might do that, I'm not saying that they're uneducated or anything. Of course, if that's how they speak, that's how they speak. But in standard American, no, that is never going to happen. Magwaz, in your opinion, what's the main difference between the Spanish S and the English S? It's a good question. I don't completely know. There probably is a slight difference, if for nothing else than the mouth posture, because the mouth is held a little bit different. They're definitely extremely similar, but they're probably not like pinpoint 100% the same. I have noticed since I've been adjusting my mouth posture in Spanish, since I never knew about it before, and I've been trying to train that into my Spanish a bit, that when I do an S, because Spanish seems to be like pretty much almost completely spoken from the tip of the tongue. Like you guys just front load everything. And of course I'm not a native, so maybe that's not an accurate statement, but that seems to be the case based on what I've noticed and what I've played with. But I've noticed that as I try to shift my mouth posture, my S seems to kind of see does it slide forward? Let's see. Es muy interesante, muy interesante. Yeah, it kind of it's maybe a slightly more forward, a little closer to the teeth. I'm not necessarily doing it in a different way, which could be English interference. I'd have to like really go in, and I've never gone in and paid like super close attention to the S in Spanish versus English to see if there are any little minor differences, because they sound so similar that I've just always used the S that I know how to use. So there might be a little bit of difference in placement, but they should sound pretty much the same. So I don't know. And I know there's some regional differences there too. Like I think, what is that? There's a region in Spain, and this was I think it might have been bigger historically, because I noticed this accent quite a bit when I was watching Isabel, the historical drama about Queen Isabel. And there's this Spain accent, which maybe it's also in Latin America, I don't know, where like the S's are almost kind of like SH's kind of. So they'll say, and it might only be in certain places, but if they say like nosotros, they'll say something like, which I can't do it, but it's something like nosotros, or something like that. And that's a little bit different. So if the way you speak Spanish is like that, that's definitely going to be different in English. But if it's just like a normal Spanish S that I would expect to hear from most people, then it's going to be largely the same. That's the thing about a lot of the consonants. Even if they are very slightly different, they're usually close enough that it doesn't matter all that much. But that can also be a trick, because I know like the SH in Japanese, if you don't listen closely, it sounds just like a regular SH, but if you listen really closely, it actually does sound a little bit different. And then like the CH sound in German, well, I think it's the weak CH, or whatever, the late CH, I don't know what they call it, but it's like instead of that also is a little tricky to get as well. But aside from that, a lot of the consonants are going to match up fairly well. That's part of the reason why the vowels cause most of the problems. So, okay, so where are we here? Hello from Dominican Republic. Welcome, Javier. Javier. Nice name. I like that name. Welcome to everybody. Let's see. Go to Flap T is fine. Yes, exactly. Ukraine and Russia are brothers. Oh, that's a nice name. I don't want to bring the politics into this, but we should all be brothers and sisters, I think. We're all humans. That's my position. But anyway, how to pronounce the word side, like that side. So side, this is going to sound, if I were typing, this is going to sound exactly the same as this. There's no difference in pronunciation. The GH is silent. There's a lot of words where you'll see GH in the spelling, and it's just there for spelling because it's English, right? Sometimes it's a F sound, like in laugh, sometimes, or in cough, or tough. I'm trying to think of, I think there's another case. But yeah, F or silent are two common things. So when we say like though, if you actually spell it fully, a lot of people just put THO these days, which is informal writing, but that's the silent GH as well. It's just O. So yeah, side, fully enunciated. You push out a weak D at the end. You can hold the D, stop the D, side, he side. Flap D is like prone to happen a lot, especially if you say things fast or say the same thing fast a lot. Like 10, 10, 10, 10, you might start flapping. Possibly, kind of, sort of. So if I say 10 a million times, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, it's never going to turn into a D, because 10 has a T that's at the start of a stressed syllable, so it's impossible to change it into a flap D. It's not going to happen. Maybe if you get super lazy and you're speaking super fast and you're like repeating things a lot, perhaps something strange like that can happen, but it's definitely not within the normal bounds of speech. Now, if it were two, the preposition to, not the word to, like the number two, that's a stressed word with a strong T at the start. But since to is not stressed, normally, TO, if you say like, you can keep it a T. You can say, I don't even know if we can continuously flap. It's kind of, it comes out weird. But yeah, you can kind of do a little bit of a flap D for that. Welcome to the chat. Side. Yes, very nice transcription there. Although you don't need the you don't need the caret, little arrow. I use that when there's two stresses, and the little arrow shows which is the primary stress. But yeah, psi would be psi, S-A-I. Good, perfect. What's the difference in pronunciation between the words collar and color? The first one, so in both of them, the is the same. I lost my spot there. Okay, so even though the first word ends with the spelling AR and the second one ends with the spelling OR, they're both just pronounced It's not an R-colored vowel or anything. It's just the vowel. And that will happen very commonly with, regardless of the spelling. If it's ER-IR, OR-AR, or maybe even UR, if it's in an unstressed syllable, often it's just going to be AR has a lot of possibilities and weird things that happen. OR pretty much always, if it's not stressed. Actually, I would say always, 100%. If it's not stressed, it's just instead of or. So the second part of those words are the same, lur. The first part is where the difference is, even though that's spelled the same. This is English, right? We know it's such a great language in terms of the spelling. The first one is collar. Now I use the cot merger, which still sounds perfectly fine in neutral. There's nothing wrong with it. But that's where and merge into . The unmerged and the merged ah sound very, very similar. So if you don't hear a difference, it's okay. But for people who don't have the cot merger, I'm not sure which one of those they would use. Probably ah. But anyway, I would just say collar. So just like call, C-A-L-L, you call someone. So this word and this word are pronounced exactly the same. Exactly the same. They're spelled differently, but they're pronounced exactly the same. The second word is color. So that uses a, which I would label as a schwa. In this case, it's not a true schwa. It's the upside down V, but in American English, it's part of the range of the schwa sound, or what we can label as the schwa sound. So it's color. So it's just like cut, except there's no T, there's an L. Color. Okay. Go to the beach. The something can be a, I think you missed a letter there. The blank can be a dental D. Otherwise, it's only the two part that can flap. The. So you didn't put correct or quotation marks under that. So I thought it was like the, like letter, the something. Yes. The TH can be a dental D. Yes. Go to the. That's fine. But remember, the dental D and dental T only replace the TH sounds, not normal T's and D's. Just so everybody remembers that. Are brothers different vowel? Collar. Yeah, again, we don't need the arrows. That's part of the name Ukraine. Or yeah, you're giving an answer. Yeah, it's a different vowel. Good. Schwa versus ah. Random characters just answering all the questions before me. Schwa versus ah. Schwa's exactly. Collar and color sound the same, by the way. Color and color. Yes, exactly. Thanks. We're just like on the same page apparently. You're welcome, Atroxylon. I'm just gonna say Airtroxylon. There's kind of an I in there. I'm just ignoring it because I always forget that little I that's in there. Erytroxylon. But you're welcome. Cambridge Dictionary says that the word commodity means things that can be traded, bought, or sold, but everything could be traded or sold. So what do you understand by the word commodity? Don't want to get demonetized here. I mean, technically, right? So there's like, you could sell a human, but we wouldn't call that a commodity, because like you're not supposed to do that in the first place. Maybe like 200 years ago, I guess you could label it under commodity, but the world is a better place now. Although a lot of that still happens, unfortunately. What do I understand by the word commodity? Yeah, that's a good definition. Everything could be traded or sold. I mean, can you give a more specific thing? Like, because if you say everything could be traded or sold, like, well, can you give an example of something that you wouldn't label as a commodity? I mean, just so I have something to work with here, because that seems like a good definition. But commodities are in my experience with the word, commodities are often things that are like consumable. It's like food is a commodity, but obviously that includes other things. So, like I don't think a house would be a commodity. Maybe, I don't know. All the country names that end with the letter A are pronounced. See, before I go into that, so the average person, I mean, maybe like really well educated, maybe they'll have a more nuanced understanding, but the average person with, just like normal standard education, commodity is, I think, in my experience at least, a little bit of a specialized term to like economy, markets, things like that. And so if the average person doesn't really pay attention to that, they're not going to be exposed to that word as much. And so, like, of course, we're going to hear it, but we might not know a more nuanced definition. So that would go like, for example, I'm not I don't know what's a good example here. I'm not a quantum physicist, right? So if you ask me about I don't know, what's a random quantum physics term? I don't know, if you ask me about Schrodinger's cat, Schrodinger, I want to say Schrodinger's cat or something like that, and like I don't know, I'm not as familiar with all those terms. I might have a superficial surface knowledge of some concepts, but it's maybe that's a little more niche, but it's kind of a similar case. All the country names that end with the letter A are pronounced with a schwa. Good question. Probably not USA, right? If we use the abbreviation, let's say USA. But yeah, Russia, China. I'm gonna get so demonetized. Let's see here. Cambodia, Indonesia. Yeah, off the top of my head, all the ones that end in A are ending with That's a common thing that we do. And we actually transfer that into other languages because it's a common pattern. A lot of words that end with an unstressed letter A are going to be pronounced with So like you go to a language like Spanish, suddenly we have a lot of A's at the end of words. And I never noticed until a couple of years ago that I was always saying, instead of me gusta, I was saying me gusta. And I was not only was I breaking the rhythm because I didn't even know about the rhythm at that point, but I was reducing it to a schwa. Instead of saying I was saying So yeah, that's a pattern we have for sure. It might depend on the country name though. Just like, I mean, we say we put the before some country names, just because, and similarly, there might be some country names that end in A where it's not pronounced off the top of my head. I was gonna say Antarctica, that's a continent, but that also ends in So probably it's probably always going to be a schwa, but English usually has exceptions. So random characters. Japanese sh is different than English sh. Yes, two different sounds. They're very similar though. They're recognizable as sh sounds, just like the E in English and the E in Spanish and the E in German are going to be all a little bit different, but they would be recognized easily as the same sound. There's just a slight different quality to them. Russian sh is closer to Japanese, but still different sound because of the mouth posture. Yeah. Mouth posture is really what does it. And that's something that I've realized about this mouth posture stuff is that the way that most people teach, the way that even I used to teach, you go and watch this mouth posture stuff has completely reorganized the entire way that I approach pronunciation. Because the way that sounds are usually taught is like, okay, there's this sound, there's this sound, there's this sound. And you look at the vowel chart that's useful. You say, okay, we use the front of the tongue. It's high in the mouth. Okay, that's all useful. But then the sounds are kind of just like free floating. Like, okay, like maybe the front vowels are all connected by the fact that we use the front of the tongue. But what about the rest of the tongue? Like it's not just where you place the sound. It's also affected by the rest of the tongue. So like you can do E with the back of the tongue up, you can do E with the back of the tongue down, and you're going to get two slightly different things. Sometimes it doesn't matter depending on the language and whatnot, but those little things can happen. And what the mouth posture does with the center of gravity is when you build the center of gravity first, you now have a universal anchor that everything is relative to. And so instead of just having all these floating sounds in the mouth, even for some of the consonants, which aren't so floating, they're either touch or they get close to touching. The way that you have the mouth posture, like a good example is the T and D in Spanish, because in Spanish the tongue is pushed forward a little bit more and the mouth is a little more closed. It makes perfect sense to me that the T and D in Spanish would be a dental T and D, right? So they say tu, tu, where we say tu, right? To, tu. or TWOTOO. And we would never use that dental as a regular T in English. That's just a special replacement for the TH because the TH is already there. But it makes sense if the tongue is kind of pushed forward and the mouth is a little more closed, you're probably going to place the T and D here. That doesn't mean you have to necessarily. I don't know if there's a language where the tongue is pushed more forward and they use more of a T or D like in English, but it does line up and it makes more sense. I've also noticed that one of the biggest problems for English speakers learning Spanish, for example, is rolling the R. And when you think about things in terms of mouth posture, it makes perfect sense because what is American English? American English is more open. Center of gravity is in the center of the mouth. Where in Spanish, the mouth is a little more closed. The center of gravity is up here. And so it makes it a whole lot easier to roll your tongue if the center of gravity is here. You push forward a little bit, your tongue is already kind of in place to roll. It doesn't mean it's automatically going to happen, but just trying to shift my mouth posture in Spanish has made it so much easier to roll my R's. I still don't have it 100%. I've just kind of been playing with it a little bit, but even just a little bit of playing that I'm doing, like if I'm singing along with songs and stuff, I notice that if I have that mouth posture in place, rolling the R's kind of just happens. And I noticed that there's sometimes Spanish speakers, right? You're only supposed to roll in terms, because the spelling, it says phonetically spelled. So if you have one R at the front of a word, you're supposed to roll it, not just do a tap. Or if you have two R's, like in the middle of a word, then you're supposed to roll it instead of just tap. But if it's just one R in the middle, you just tap. But I've noticed that some Spanish speakers, like they'll say amor or amar, but then they'll roll it at the end, even though you're not technically supposed to. So they'll say like amar, something like that. And still using American posture there. And playing with the posture, I realize why now, because it's actually so effortless to not just tap, but to get a couple extra little taps in there and roll it on accident, because you're in the right posture. Where if you're trying to roll from here in American English, I have to bring my tongue all the way up here, and now it's at an awkward angle, and I'm trying to tap it like this, and it just makes it so much harder to do. It's no wonder why it's a difficult sound for English speakers. We're not holding the mouth right. So anyway, little tangent there. This mouth posture stuff is huge. It's absolutely huge. It's pretty much as is. You just do stuff with your commodity, just filtered by. Stupid chat, stop moving down to the bottom when I scroll. I'm so far behind now. Do you know what the word shoopy means? I do not. I've heard it a couple times, but I don't really know what it means. That seems like slang for sure. Thank you for your answer about the S. I don't notice a difference either. However, everyone says that the Z sound is just a voiced S. That's when I kind of struggle, because even if I make my vocal cord vibrate, people still say that my Z sounds weird. Especially when it's at the end of words. Okay. Good point. Good point. When we're doing a voiceless sound, you don't have to be as accurate, because it's just breath, and we're actually not making a sound. And so if you say s or s or s, right, they're all going to sound like an S sound as long as you have that little bit of a whistle. Okay, that's fine. But then if you add the voice and you go z, 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 okay, now we're starting to get something a little bit weird, a little different because of that voice. So that can happen. So what that tells me is that at the very least, I don't know, since you're asking about Spanish, I assume you're a Spanish speaker. I don't know what country you're from, what dialect you speak, but at the very least for the Spanish that you speak, the way that you naturally do it, which Spanish is largely consistent, I think. But in your mouth, the S in Spanish and the S in English might not be placed exactly the same, or they may not be shaped exactly the same. So that's actually a good test. If you can do the voiceless one and it sounds okay, but you try the voiced one and it doesn't sound okay, then you definitely have a problem. for sure, because the S and the Z are exactly the same. It's just the Z is voiced. That's the only difference. One tiny little detail with that, I don't know if this would affect anything. It shouldn't, theoretically. But when we add voice, so if you're just breathing, right, everything can be kind of open, relaxed. There's not really any tension. Like if you just try to go to like zero tension. But as soon as you add voice, you're going to feel a little bit of tension, especially on like the back of the tongue that starts going into the throat. And it could be, I would imagine it very well might be mouth posture. But let's say your mouth posture is relatively fine. It could be maybe you have a little extra tension with the back. And so like when you try to do z, maybe you do like z, 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 or something. Or if you do s, because it's just air, that back of the tongue isn't causing a problem. But when you add the voice, it gets a little extra tense on top of how you're already tensing it. And that's causing the problem. I don't know. It's something to think about and explore and see what result you get. But if nothing else, I would direct you to the mouth posture. That's going to be phase 3. I don't have a whole lot of comment on that right now. But in phase 3 of the mouth posture, after we build that center of gravity, we're going to go do the vowel master class and then the consonant master class. And we're not only going to talk about every possible detail I can think of for every single vowel and consonant sound, but we are also going to tie each individual sound into the mouth posture. These lessons are going to be massive. Like I expect the vowel master class to be at least an hour, hour and a half long, maybe longer than that. So yeah, there's going to be lots of good stuff in those. Anyway, so hold tight for that, but you can play with things in the meantime. Lazy and fast with flap D. Okay. The letter A, but I meant sounds like open a sound versus schwa. See, open a, I don't know what that means. I assume you mean a like in cat. Because if you say open, okay, well, as open, ah is open. Since you're writing AH, I assume it's a, but some teachers use AH to refer to ah or the unmerged ah. So this is why it's all mixed up. I don't like the vague terms like that, where it's like open. Okay, yeah. So open what? Like a and ah are both open. That doesn't really tell me much. But anyway, yeah. Terminology. So like a country name that would end with a. I don't think so. Maybe. I mean, there's Japan, but there's an N after that. So maybe somewhere. I don't think so. Might have to do with your S in the voice adds a bit of tension. It's easier to find an issue when it's voice. It's more obvious. Exactly, randoms. See, he just like summarized everything I said. I think just all right. Random. The live stream's yours. You do a better job than I do, clearly. But no. Yeah, Random Characters is a Patreon supporter, and I've been working with this person on some of the mouth posture stuff. So I'm not surprised that he's giving answers like this. McGlaws, would you say that there's a difference between the S and the Z besides making the vocal cords vibrate? No, not at all. Again, aside from maybe that little extra tension that we get with the voice, but you don't try to add tension because it naturally happens when you vibrate the vocal cords. Is replacing TH with F at the end of words like pronouncing mouth is mouth or death is death? Yes, it is AAVE. And same with replacing with A at the end of words like player, playa. It's pronounced as a schwa, usually playa, mother, mother. Yes. So, which actually I wouldn't say it's an A. It sounds to me a little bit more, which I'm going to say a British schwa, because if you ask a British person like how they would say player, they'll say, well, the is just a schwa, but it's a British schwa. It doesn't sound exactly the same as the American schwa, because it doesn't quite sound like playa to me. It sounds like playa playa, playa. So anyway, it doesn't matter. That's not the point. Both of those presumably come from AAVE. For those of you who don't know what AAVE is, African American Vernacular English, which I think is more traditionally broadly referred to as Ebonics, which I've said many times there's nothing wrong with. It's just not standard American English. The first one, definitely 100%. I have not heard anyone who is not African American pronounce, at least in America, right? We're talking about American English specifically. I have not heard a person speaking American English who is not African American saying mouth, like, ever. It's possible, depending on maybe what kind of community you come from, but generally, it would definitely stand out. It would stand out for sure. And of course, if you say deaf instead of death, I mean, the context, yeah, but it sounds like a different word in that case. Mouth is not a word. Also, bathroom, replace it with an F there. That also happens in, I think, Cockney British English. So it's not just an AAV thing, but within the context of American English, I would say it seems to be an AAVE thing. Replacing the with that, I think, definitely came from AAVE, and in a lot of words, it would probably still sound AAVE. But one of the very interesting and I think awesome things is that because a lot of hip hop and rap artists are native speakers of AAVE, and it affects how they sound. And then rap and hip hop, American rap and hip hop specifically, have had such a huge impact on American culture and the world in general. There's a lot of things that originated in AAVE that have entered the general standard language, and they just sound informal. So they don't necessarily sound like, oh, like that's not standard. It's just now it's informal standard. So if I say, when I see mother, I want to add the F word after it. But if I were to say like mother, like any speaker could do that if they're speaking informally. I would say player, right? Like, I mean, I don't really address anybody as player, but if I hypothetically were and say, hey, what's up, player? Like, I could do that. I don't know if some people would get angry at me for doing that. There probably would be some people, but to me, it just sounds informal. So yeah. That being said, what if you say something like gamer? Like, he's a gamer. He's a gamer. Now it doesn't really sound AAVE, and it doesn't really sound like informal standard. It just sounds like you're kind of intentionally doing it to play with the language. So that doesn't apply to everything necessarily. So it's a little more open. But the first one for sure, yeah. If you're not speaking AAVE, which there's nothing wrong with, if you want to speak that way, that's fine. But if you're not speaking AAVE, you're speaking standard American English, do not replace TH with F. I have noticed on random occasion, it can kind of slip out, like on accident. We can get a little tongue-tied, and it might happen then. But that's obviously, that wasn't intended. It's not supposed to happen. Okay, if you say words like sama or similar Japanese words, you might say sama, but usually it's a schwa at the end. Yeah, I would never say sama. Like, I can't imagine. Maybe if I'm playing with it, like if I say, I don't know, like Takahashi sama, you know. But yeah, sama. So yeah, we would put we would naturally make that a schwa as well. As I said, it's a very common thing throughout American English. That sounds southern uneducated. Last thing Jabrini said. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we talked about that. If you don't have the merger, okay, merget, merger typo, just call me Emmanuel. But I like Etroxylon. I mean, if you want me to call you Emmanuel, I can. That's not a problem. But Atroxylon is such a cool name, even if I don't say it right. It kind of makes me think that you're like a transformer, like I'm sure you know what transformers are, but Atroxylon, or like something from like Magic the Gathering, or like some fantasy thing like Lord of the Rings. Like sounds like you're like a warlock, an evil wizard or something. Like you use poison magic or something. I am Atroxylon. I don't know. That's the impression I get. It's probably not at all what you were going for, but I think it's cool. Sounds very jargon. Yeah, it does sound kind of jargon. I would agree. There's a lot of jargon words that are only found or talked about in specific fields, terms, and otherwise nobody ever uses it, but it somehow comes up naturally in those contexts. Yeah, of course. Commodity, I wouldn't say is that limited, but it would definitely be much more bound to that contextual situation. Canada, Korea, Australia. Yeah, we talked about that. The Netherlands, the USA. I don't know what that's for. Welcome, Finn. In sentences like, are you mad, dude? Supposed to be a comma there. Are you mad, comma, dude? Is the first D in dude a weak, strong, or flap D? I usually pronounce it as a flap or weak D. Well, let's see. If we take the word by itself, is dude stressed or unstressed? It's stressed. It's a content word. So it has to be a strong D. Okay. Now, yeah, because we're talking about the first D. So the first D has to be a strong D. Very good. Now, if we combine it with mad, now we have two Ds in a row. And the basic rule there is you're going to stop the first D, or you're going to stop the D in mad, pronounce the D in dude. Are you mad, dude? Mad, dude? And that would still be a strong D. Can we? I wouldn't make it a weak D, because then you'd be de-stressing dude. Like, are you mad, dude? Mad, dude? Mad, dude? I guess maybe if it's just like a little, like it could come out that way, but it kind of sounds shy or weak, like you're hesitant, and so there's like you're not fully pushing out that end of the word. Like if I say, if you say like, hey, do you want to go to the beach tomorrow? And I say, like, yeah, if you want, So I'm gonna say if you want, right? It's supposed to be stressed, but I say if you want. I make it nice and small. It's like it sounds like I'm speaking small because it's supposed to be stressed. So I sound like I'm like scared or lack confidence or something. So if you say, like, are you mad, dude? Are you mad, dude? Like it sounds kind of like you're cautious or you're scared or something like that. So I would be careful with that. Can you flap it? Well, theoretically, the only way that you could flap it is if you take the D in mad and the D in dude, combine them into one D and then flap that. Is that possible? Are you mad, dude? Are you mad, dude? Mad, dude? Definitely not. Nope, doesn't work. Can we erase one of the D's? Are you mad, dude? Are you mad, dude? Are you mad, dude? Yeah, you can drop. There we go. Okay. If you drop the D in dude, so this is something, right? The standard rule, as I said, you're supposed to say mad dude. So you stop the first one, push out the second one, because we have two D's next to each other. Same thing if there's two T's. You stop the first one, push out the second one. Pet, turtle, whatever. Then what happens is if you're speaking a little faster, so you're not it doesn't have to be super fast, but if you're not clearly enunciating, you have enough speed, you actually don't have to stop the first and pronounce the second. You can just kind of delete one of them and continue through. And in that case, it would probably be, let's see, can I do weak or strong? Are you mad, dude? 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 Yeah. So if you put the focus on mad, which is probably where it would normally be, then you can use a weak D going from mad to dude, and that would sound fine. If you put more focus on dude, like, are you mad, dude? Are you mad, dude? Are you mad, dude? Then you're definitely going to want to push out a stronger D because we're giving a little more focus there. So it depends. It's dynamic. Definitely not a flap. I can't imagine a situation where there's a flap. If you can show me an example, like you have a video clip or something where somebody's flapping it, I can look at that and maybe I'll change my mind. But based on how it sounds to me and what I can think of, I can't imagine a flap being there. That would make you sound very weird. When you say breathes, it's supposed to come out as breeze, right? It's not supposed to. It's supposed to come out as breathes. That's the fully enunciated word. But it usually comes out as breeze. Yeah, it'll sound exactly like the word breeze. Because that TH will sort of, can't even remember my own terms. I haven't talked as much about this. So shifting, it can shift into the Z sound because it's a Z, not an S at the end. So he breathes heavily, There's a bit of a range there where you can sort of like get a little bit of a sliding TH, breathes, where you don't fully do the TH, you just kind of like do it kind of lightly and then go into the Z. That's also very common. You'll mostly just hear the Z. Or you can even say breathes, he breathes heavily. That is probably not going to be as common, but it is possible. It's actually a little harder to do, but you can do that dental D. So just a possibility. I want to cover all the bases there. Most likely it's just going to be breeze. Yeah. Random characters. The D in the mad word might get omitted if you say it fast. What are the possibilities of pronunciation linking these? Oh, welcome, Steve. Both those. Okay. I'm never going to run out of content, I swear to God. Okay. Both those. So if you fully enunciate, right, we have a voiceless TH and a voiced TH. So both those. And what we actually tend to do, we won't actually usually hold it if we're enunciating, because that's the only way that, well, not the only way, but that's pretty much the only time that we would actually do like a full voiceless TH and a full voiced TH is if we're enunciating. And if that's the case, we're probably not going to actually hold the position. We're going to say both those. So both, and then let the tongue kind of come away, like relax for a second, and then go back in. It's a little easier than holding it there, actually. Unlike if you had, say, like an S and an S, you could just hold that same position without moving. Just a little side note. But both those. Okay. You can say both those. So we know that the voiceless TH can be replaced by a dental T. The voiced TH can be replaced by a dental D. And you could just do dental T into dental D. Both those. That's not a problem. Now you're not going to say both those while you release the dental T and then go back into the dental D. They're going to sort of flow together. So you go into the dental T, but then you release a dental D. You can say both those. So I went all the way up here. You don't want to do that. No, that sounds very informal. I was trying to do a dental. Both those. So you can sort of hit, like right here, you can hit that voiceless TH and then let it close into the dental D. Both those. Just don't let it slide up like I accidentally did the first time and say a regular D. And then can you say both? We're not going to do a dental T in both and then release it and do a regular voiced TH because that's just a lot harder. There's no reason to do that. So that variation wouldn't exist. That might be it. You know, most commonly, we're just going to do that dental to dental, both those. Yeah. Dental D or full voice TH and then Z. Full voice TH and then Z. Oh, I had Finn. Never mind. I was talking about Steve. I was like, what? There's no Z there. Oh, chat keeps moving. So far behind. We have a very productive time today, guys. It makes no sense grammatically since it's always both of those, but it'd be actually random characters got something wrong. Yeah, so the of can be dropped. There's absolutely no problem with that. We commonly do that. So the range for that would be, regardless of how you pronounce the THs in both those, I'm just going to pick one. It doesn't matter. You say both those, both of those, both of, you can say both the, drop the V because we commonly drop the V sound in of, both of those. So you have like 3 possibilities there. But we do commonly drop of. The schwa in the second or last, okay, so Paolo, welcome. The schwa in the second or last syllable sometimes sound different than a full pronunciation schwa. Like if it has changed, okay, has been changed by the spelling letter in the schwa position, that doesn't quite make sense. No. So in the second, so I assume you mean if it's like a schwa sound that's at the end, like in the last syllable, not necessarily at the very end, it could just be the last syllable, or like the second to last syllable, so it's like here or here, and then there's more over here. Sometimes sounds different than it has nothing to do with the letter, absolutely nothing to do with the letter. Potentially, any vowel letter, A, E, I, O, U, can be a schwa sound in the actual pronunciation. This is one reason why you want to separate the spelling from the sounds, the letters from the sounds, because they're 2 completely different things. Most commonly, maybe the letter U, or in reductions with maybe the letter E, the letter I, will be an but potentially an O can be like to can reduce to ta. Or in, like we were talking about, color, right? Technically it's upside down V, but it's still part of the range of the schwa in American English. Ka, color. But anyway, yeah. So the spelling has no effect on sound. Okay, you want to erase that because the way you were taught was backwards. So you're used to thinking there's the letter or the combination of letters, and these are tied to certain sounds. But that's actually not true. That's backwards. The spoken language is spoken in a particular way, and then the written language is sometimes things are spelled the way that they sound. Usually they're not. And so you can't, some things are consistent, like the letter P. I don't think the letter P by itself ever represents anything other than a P. Now if it's a PH, that will usually represent an F in English because it comes from the Greek base. But if it's just a P by itself, so that you can kind of rely on. But when we're talking about vowels, there's all kinds of exceptions. There's all kinds of things. There are spelling patterns that you can rely on. Like E is most commonly spelled EE or EA. But even then, sometimes EA or EE might be pronounced with a different vowel. There are always exceptions, either going from the sound to the spelling or the spelling to the sound, what you would expect. So they're 2 separate things. And you always want to focus on the sound, not the letter. That's why you should start with sounds. But anyway, basically your question, like, does the schwa ever change, right? Does it ever get slightly different based on maybe the position where it is in the word, for example? I think that's basically what you're asking. One thing to keep in mind is that, right, if I go from, say, the sound T to the sound E versus going from the sound T to the sound A, T, ta, T, ta, T, ta, we wouldn't recognize it as a different sound. It's still definitely within what we would consider as a perfectly clear, fine, in this case, strong T sound. T. But if you listen very, very, very closely and you actually really, really get down to the nuanced details, when I release and I go from T to E, my tongue is releasing in a different way than if I release and go from T to A, T to A. So technically speaking, if you listen really closely, you will hear that the T that T and ta is not 100% exactly the same T, but it doesn't make any difference in American English. We wouldn't even notice that there's a difference there, even though technically on a very small level, there is a very tiny, tiny difference. So any time, whether it's a consonant or a vowel, whatever combination you're going from, if you go from k to to p, if you go from to if you go from s to ah to to whatever it is that you're doing, right? Anytime that you hit, let's say the because you're asking about the schwa. Anytime you hit that which the itself has a range. You know, there's uh, uh, okay, that's the range in American English. That's the range of the schwa sound. Technically, only the first one is actually a schwa, but that doesn't matter. So that in itself can be a little complicated as well. So if you say cut, it can come out more as cut, cut, cut. And that's fine. Or you can say cut, cut, cut. Or you can, even if you're speaking quickly, you say cut, 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 where it's actually like a really small reduced true schwa. Cut, cut it, cut it, cut it. Okay. Regardless of the range, let's just say ah, because ah is pretty consistent. Anytime you hit ah, if you're going from kut to ah, to ah, to ah, or ah to whatever else, you will get a very, 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 very slight difference in sound based on what you're coming from and what you're going to around that sound. It does not matter. We wouldn't recognize it as like a separate sound or something different or something special. It's incidental because of the mechanics of the mouth. Obviously, if I go from k to ah, ka, and then I go to ah, sa, ka, sa, the tongue is coming from a different place. And so as I move into that sound, you're going to hear something in between the two, but the endpoint should be pretty much the same. Again, the schwa has a bit of a range, so that endpoint can kind of vary depending on various factors. But anyway, hopefully that answers your question. Is hostile ever pronounced hostile? It's a hostile environment. This is a very hostile environment. It's a bit too hostile. A bit too hostile. It's a very hostile environment. Maybe I would lean towards no, especially not if it's like the focus word. But maybe. If I say like he's too hostile, it just sounds bad. Like I can't imagine anybody saying that. But if I say like it's a hostile environment and I say it quickly, it doesn't sound bad. It sounds okay. So that's why I say maybe, but I would lean towards no. Like it's definitely not supposed to be because the ST isn't at the end. So yeah, I don't think we usually drop the T unless it's at the end usually. Anyway, it's unstressed. Okay. Fully pronounced was always stressed. Well, unless we're going by technical terminology, yes, but we could say that within American English. Hostile, yes. You explained that when there's an NT rule where you can drop the N, make the vowel before nasal, and just finish it with a glottal stop, like the word can't. How does this apply to didn't, if it does at all? Okay, yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I explained before how one of the ways that you can pronounce can't, that makes it a lot easier. Well, maybe, I guess, it depends, is instead of saying can't, right? One thing you can do is just stop the T, which is very common, can't. Or we have this special thing. So English officially does not have nasal vowels, which is where you say a vowel like ah, but then you let the velum, the flap in the back, be a little more open. So part of the sound goes through the nose, and instead of ah, you get something like ah, ah, ah. So you get that sort of nasally sound in the vowel. English officially does not have nasal vowels. However, they can happen, particularly in what I've noticed for like can't and won't. Won't is the same. If we say that in can't, the reason why we can do this, now if you're enunciating, we're probably not going to do that. But if you have a nice, good flow, it's something that can commonly happen. Instead of saying the T, instead of saying the N, Okay, so I also have to clarify here. So Finn, so that is, so you say there's an NT rule. I wouldn't call that an NT rule because there's the NT plus vowel rule. But I think I know why you're calling it that. I wouldn't call it that so it doesn't get confused with the other one. But yeah, so instead of saying can't or can't, you can say drop the N and say can't. So you don't have to go up into the end because when we go up into the end, that creates that nasal, and then we stop it can, and the stop lets us know there's the T there instead of being positive can, right? But instead of doing that, if you let that get a little extra nasality, you actually don't have to bring the tongue up because we can stop the T just from here, right? The T is the only stop sound that we have two ways to stop it. One, you can go into the T and close off, or you could just close off and it'll be recognized as a T. So anyway, just trying to fill everybody in because I know a lot of people probably haven't heard about this. So instead of doing can and then stopping, you could just use can. So that as very nasal. Can't. See, I'm not even bringing my tongue up. I'm just stopping. I can't do it. I can't do it. Okay. Or I can't see. I can't see. Okay. Perfectly fine. Won't, same thing. I won't. You can't really see my mouth, but won't. I'm not bringing my tongue up. Won't. Tongue is still here. Won't. Just make that O a little bit more nasally. Now there's another thing that can happen there because we can actually apply the real NT plus vowel rule where we drop the T and connect the N. So if I say I can't, can we do it with can't because it might be misunderstood? Hold on. Can't eat. I can't eat. I can't eat. I can't eat. I can't eat. Yeah. So if you say I can eat, because can will usually reduce to kin, I can eat. The N just connects over to the E. But if you drop the T, connect the N, make the A little more nasal, we will still recognize that as a negative because you're making that A more nasal. I can't eat. I can't eat. I can't eat. I can't eat. If you say I can eat, I can't eat. I can't eat, there's going to be less nasal there. Obviously, there's always a little bit of nasal with any vowel before N or M. But you want to get extra nasal, and you can do that. So there's little extra variations and things based on that we can do, but you don't have to worry about all that. The basics is drop the N, stop the T, make the vowel nasal. With didn't, can we do that? Didn't is a little weird. It's such a common word that we can do something special here. So number one, we can drop the second D. Say didn't. Technically, I guess we're not dropping it. We're doing that sort of like nasal plosive type thing, but it's dropped. So you want to go from de, and then you close it right up. And when you close it like that, you want to close it quickly. That's going to create a little burst of air through the nose, and then the rest is just the end. Didn't, and then you stop it with the T. Didn't, or didn't. It all happens very quickly. So that's one thing that can happen where you're technically dropping the D. You can say, see, didn't. Can we do the nasal? Didn't. So he didn't go. In really fast and lazy speech, yes. If you say like he didn't go. He didn't go. So in that case, I'm not coming up for the D. I'm not coming up for the N. I'm making the I more nasal and then stopping. But that sounds really lazy. It has to be probably a bit faster than can't and won't. It's a little messier, but it can happen. It does exist. Yes. Definitely not enunciated. If you say like he didn't, if you're like, what? He what? So yeah. Drop the T and drop the N. Not quite. didn't. Yeah, you could also do it that way too. Instead of dropping having that stop T, like he didn't know, especially if it's like NT plus vowel, didn't know. Because if it were did, he did know, we would stop that D. So different flow there. You clearly don't know what I'm talking about here. Yeah, this is something that I don't think I explained to random characters. And it's a very small native level detail. So random characters is very good, but he doesn't know everything. That's okay. I don't even know everything. There's a lot I'm still not consciously aware of. Okay, how to say birthday? I talked about that at the beginning. So welcome. You can go back to the beginning of the video. It's not like 0, but it's very early, probably within like the first 5 minutes. Go back to the start of the video. I talked about that. Ertroxylon or Emmanuel. How do you say the I in volatile in American English? Yeah, so we have 2 ways. You could say volatile or volatile. Now, as I may have said before, but I like to reiterate everybody. So short I is not a term I use because it's confusing and practically meaningless, as well as misleading. It would be the I sound. There's no short I, there's no long I. There's the I sound and there's the I sound. That's it. This is part of the reason why you confuse spelling and sounds, because the way that sounds are talked about is tied to the letters, and you can't do that in English. A short I sound would be I. That's me saying I short in a short, quick way, like an unstressed way. Or I can do a long I sound and say I. Okay. Now I can do a short I and say I. Or I can do a long I and say I. Okay. That's short and long in English. And it's very important because it also affects the stress. The way that we label things, we need to completely relabel things in English. It might work for other languages. It does not work in English. This is one of the big problems that you guys have because you're taught in a very, very stupid way. But anyway, that's not the point here. That's not the question. So yeah, you can say you can say volatile. That's probably the full way to say it, fully enunciated way. But the pronunciation volatile also works. And the primary stress is on vol, right? Volatile. So when that happens, oftentimes if something gets secondary stress, it'll stay that way. But sometimes we get weird cases where we end up being able to reduce it. And I wouldn't even say that it's an I sound that gets replaced. It's not volatile. That would be wrong. It's not an L-colored I. It's just an ul. That's it. What most people call the dark L, but I call the half L vowel. That's all it is. You're going from the T into ul. Volatile. That's it. But yeah, both of those are fine. No problem. Also, do you have to bring the tongue up to pronounce the first N in Trenton or no? And yeah, 1 second. Hold on. Where was I? No, wrong browser. What happened? I created multiple desktops and now it's causing me a problem. Teaching. Oh yeah, this is right. There we are. Okay. The program I needed to go into really quick to send a message was open on the other desktop that I had, and so it switched me and I was like, oh my god, where did the live stream go? Okay. Do you have to bring the tongue up to pronounce the first N in Trenton or no? Trenton. No, we treat this like mountain. So Trent. Now, if you fully enunciate it, Trenton, and you actually push out that T, then yeah, you're going to bring up to the end because the T's there anyway. If I say Trenton, you can go up into the end and then do the stop. That also works, Trenton, but you don't have to. You can just do the stop. Trenton. That's fine. Because remember, it maybe there's some exceptions here, but I've noticed that, like, say for example, there's Britain and Latin where we have that glottal T in the middle where there's no N before it, but then there's like mountain, fountain, where there is an N before it, and we can do the same thing. So I don't think it usually matters if there's an N before it. You should just be able to use that glottal T in the middle. Volatile. It looks like tail. Volatile. Some people might say I for I and say O for ah. Vo. I can't imagine anybody saying volatile. No. Trenton without the second T. Very nice. Good job. I mentioned already, but okay. Random characters again. Message. It depends on what kind of TH is clear. There's a lot of using digital. Yeah. So, well, that's the other thing. So, when we're talking about AAVE, like the interesting thing about AAVE, just as a quick little side note, when we talk about that, the African American vernacular English, it seems in my experience that AAVE, it actually has like its own grammar, which according to the standard is considered broken and incorrect. So they often don't conjugate be. So they'll say like I be, he be, we be, like we be walking, whatever. And within AAVE, it is grammatically correct. It's perfectly fine. It's consistent. And there's nothing wrong with it in itself. It's not standard. So there's certain grammatical differences within AAVE, and there's certain pronunciation differences. But remember, AAVE speakers live within American society. And so they also get exposed a lot to non-AAVE, like standard dialect, or even like non-AAVE Southern dialect, for example, depending on where they're from. And so, especially with the media, right? Media is supposed to, usually you hear this sort of standard neutral pronunciation. And so I think most, if not all, African Americans naturally grow up with both. It's almost like, it's like being semi-bilingual, kind of, where like if you grow up with Spanish and English, like from birth, you're going to know how to speak both. And AAVE isn't a different language, but because it does have its own grammar and pronunciation within it, and there's probably a little bit of variation even within that, it's almost like it's like a semi separate thing. And so they'll often choose, right? If an AAVE speaker is in more of like a formal professional context, you'll very commonly hear them sound more neutral and more standard. And then if they're just hanging out and talking whatever, like they might just not use AAVE at all. There's some people who do that. And then there's some who, in that more informal situation, they'll switch into like the AAVE pronunciation and reductions and slang and all this stuff. And so it's very interesting, I think, and very cool. So yeah, but there's definitely variation. There's a range, and it's not like, oh, Black people talk this way. It's like, no, it's that's not accurate and a very limited view. I'm gonna go ahead and hide that one. It wasn't anything too bad, but we're already pushing this live stream. Schwa for sounds, informal and playful. Wait, Schwa for oh, okay. Yeah, we were talking about that before. Most people usually don't use schwas at the end unless they have a Southern speech pattern. That also depends. There's a range of Southern dialects. If you're more of like, I guess what we call Southern Belle, where there's maybe a bit more French accent, or sorry, French influence, because France used to own that part of the country at one time, a long time ago. Then you'll get a lot of like, instead of saying Southern, they'll say Southern. I'm a Southerner. Right? So it's like light, lilting sort of schwa, where you'll hear other Southerners say like, I'm a Southerner. They might say Southerner or something, Southerner, or you in the North, or you in the North, right? So there's a range even within the South. Not everybody will do the same thing. Does sound cool when you say it. Yeah. I wish it was in trucks. Air trucks. Air trucks a lot. I'd shift the stress there too. It's an air truck salon. Instead of air truck salon. So you could do that if you shift the stress to air. Instead of saying air truck salon, truck salon, you could do both there. But anyway, whatever. Doesn't matter. Making puns on the name. Yeah. Oh my god, I'm so far behind, guys. If anybody new is here that I haven't greeted, I'm sorry. I'm not going to get to everything today. I can already see that. We got to tone it down a little. There's only so much I could do. We got 45 minutes left. I'm spending a little bit too much time on things that don't matter too much, though. So let's try to speed this up. English is a beautiful pun language. It is. Puns are amazing. The bad spelling system allows that. That is true. That's very good point. I never realized that. Yes, the one silver lining, the one amazingly good thing about the spelling system is that you end up with a lot more puns. So, but how does airy sound like air? It depends on how you say it. You say, so if I say erytroxylon, or ertroxylon, if I drop that vowel there, ertroxylon, or I can pronounce it as airtroxylon, which, remember, with the R-colored the third vowel, it's possible to pronounce it as plus or a plus I generally just teach to do because you don't have to worry about doing a triphthong, a plus and you could just anchor it into the so it's variation, it doesn't matter. Okay, whatever, blah 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 blah. Erytroxylon. Can the first D in dude flap in situations like yeah dude, nah dude, because I feel like when it comes out as something between a flat D and weak D as opposed to the strong D one would expect as in dark. Yeah dude, nah dude, it's dark. Yeah dude, nah dude, yeah dude. Okay, so now that there's a vowel before it, right? Because before we were talking about mad, that was a different situation. Now that there's a vowel directly before it, which potentially allows us to enter a flap situation because we need vowels around it. The general rule, what is usually going to happen is a strong D is a strong D. It's not going to flap. There are some exceptions to that, like do, when it's a helping verb, maybe even sometimes the main verb, but when it's a helping verb, it's not stressed, and so it can flap. But when it's a main verb, like if I say I do the laundry every day, I do. If I'm speaking really quickly, you can kind of flap it even though it's stressed. But that's probably because it's a super common word and a super common structure. And so we get some weird things, just like get is stressed. It's not supposed to reduce, but we commonly reduce it to get, even though stress words aren't supposed to reduce. So here, as long as you have a vowel before dude, if you're speaking quickly enough and lazily enough, it seems okay to me. If I try to do it like a full-on flap, like I would if I were saying, like, what if? It's like, yeah, dude, yeah, dude, yeah, dude, nah, dude, nah, dude. It's like there's something a little bit off, and I feel like I have to force, like I have to intentionally try to do a flap. So I don't think that it's actually a flap. It would be like, so you said it comes out as something between a flap D and a weak D. So it could, what it probably is, it's probably a weak D that is just very lazily done, and because it's done quickly and we're not holding it there, we're not like actually like duh. It's like duh, duh, duh. It's almost like it's flapping, but it's not flapping. So that's probably what's happening. To bring it all the way to a flap seems kind of weird. But again, you would need enough speed, and you'd have to be speaking lazily enough. Under normal circuit, like if I say, yeah, dude, yeah, dude, yeah, dude, that's a strong D. Or nah, dude, nah, dude, nah, dude. So most of the time, under normal circumstances, it's not going to be that way. At least as far as I can think. If you can give me a sound clip of somebody speaking, not too fast, not too lazy, where they're flapping it, I can listen to that, but it shouldn't work very well. Something similar happens when you say I do. Yeah, I was just talking about that. But remember, if do is a helping verb and it's not stressed, then there's absolutely no problem with that. Because then it's not even stressed to begin with, so it wouldn't be a strong D anyway, unless maybe you clearly enunciate, just like to. If we clearly enunciate to, you can get a strong T there, even though it's technically not stressed, but we're isolating it. Anyway, Delio, welcome, Delio. I finally got to you. I don't know how long ago this was. There's a video I'd love for you to check out. How native does the girl in the video sound? You can watch whatever snippet you see fit. The channel is Rafaela Kruger, and the video is I quit social media for a month. Okie dokie. Copy. YouTube. I don't know why I had my headphones on. Oh, yeah, that's right, because I posted the recording, and then I posted the video, the new winners video for the mouth posture. Okay. Is there a particular video? I quit social media for a month. Okay. Yeah, because this one is un método fácil para practicar inglés. Videos. I don't see that video. Videos. It'd be really nice if you guys could just send me links, but I understand why they block them. I quit social media for a month. There it is. Okay. And you're asking if she sounds native. How native does the girl sound? Okay, let's see. Come on, load. You shouldn't be having any problems, internet. Hope my stream is good. I don't know what's going on here. Of course, I jumped to a point in the video, and the guy, she's listening to some guy speak Spanish. It's like, of course, it's not English. Let me try. I need to find a spot where she's actually talking. Oh my god! I don't know why this is loading so slowly. I may have too many things open on my computer, probably. Oh my god, stop freezing. So far, what I'm hearing, I'm not hearing anything that sounds unnatural or not native-like. The only thing maybe is how she said master. It kind of came out as like master, but that could just be a weird thing. Oh my god, stop freezing. Ooh, when she said good, I heard like good, good, good. Like, there's something weird there. So okay, so what I'm noticing from her, I tried to listen to her for like 30 seconds or so. I don't like. Okay, I don't even know how I want to label this. I want to be accurate, but okay, I'm gonna give her 100%, 100% native, like based on what I like, 100% native. Period. Like I would think she's a native, just straight up. I wouldn't have any question about it. That being said, because I did notice a little slip with master and good, which sometimes things just kind of come out weird, like even for natives, like our tongue gets a little tied sometimes. Things, we're not robots. So like maybe like if I listen to her regularly and like I might start noticing, oh, there's a little thing here, a little thing there, and I'd bump her down to like 99.999999999. But yeah, she sounds like a native, for sure. I assume she's not, and that's why you're asking me. But yeah. If you would have just asked me, hey, is this person a native speaker? I would say yes. I think I know what you mean. I think I run into this sometimes too, but I think it's our fossils. I never hear natives say I do with a flap or generally any flaps. Yeah, so your fossilization, things that are sort of engraved into your brain from previous bad habits, or like not having your ears open enough and stuff, it can color your brain's perception of what's actually going on, which is why we really want to focus on the sounds, opening the ears, developing tongue sensitivity and all that stuff. So yeah. Still East Coast. So random character says East Coast. Just sounds perfectly neutral to me. East, West, Center. Just she sounds American, period. I don't notice any difference. Could you maybe pinpoint some of those words sounds if you don't mind? Oh, okay. She says some R words. They sound a bit weird. I think they're fine when she says them normally. I think that specifically stands out. They sound like they probably grew up on the East Coast or something. Very neutral, by the way. Yeah, I would not pick up. I'm not picking up any coastal regional variation. Definitely neutral. As I said, most American speakers have a neutral sound. That's the important thing. I don't care if there's slight differences between the East and the West and the Central Midland and all this stuff. Neutral is neutral. Is will you for emphasis here? Okay, so is there, wait, hold on. Is will you, is will you used for emphasis here? We need a word there. Buzz off, will you? Yeah, probably. It seems that would probably be the main use of it. They used to say buzz off, right? Like leave me alone, go away. The will you, it's a rhetorical question, obviously, a question that doesn't expect an answer. I'm not actually asking you like, will you buzz off? Will you leave? Going back to Shakespeare, willeth thou buzz off? You can actually put the will you in front too. Like, will you buzz off? It's probably more of an emphasis role. Yeah. Makes the phrase just a little stronger overall. Just kind of a funny way to tell somebody to get lost, probably something, well, I'm sure he knows what buzz off means, but she's Brazilian and she's never been to the US. She learned English pretty much just like most of us. Well, good. There's hope. There's hope for everybody. Yeah. Or like Benny Lewis learning Arabic in Brazil. I don't know how well he mastered the pronunciation, but he reached, I think it was lower intermediate, all in Brazil. So not too many Arabic speakers there. Thanks to the magic of the internet, really pretty much anything you want to do is on you. Like it's on you. Because the internet has so many tools and resources. I am one such resource for you guys, or I try to be. But it's really all on you. Then I've had okay, a little chatting. I'm gonna skip ahead so I can catch up. I'm trying to nitpick on her accent, but too much to my chagrin. Very nice word. I came up empty. Yeah, even to my ears. So there's not much there. I don't think. Not much to pick out. To start learning at an early age. That does help. Age, my opinion, when we're talking about skill development, especially for languages, but any skill development, age is simply a multiplier. The big myth is that age determines your ability, right? So obviously, like when you're super young, if you start when you're super young, the brain's still forming. Like, oh, you're gonna like some things you have to start that early in order to become a master, and that might be relatively true. And then people say, of course, oh, I'm too old, right? Which most people think too old is like 30, 40. Like, no, you're stupid. To be blunt, like Steve Kaufman is like 70, 80 years old or something. He's still learning languages. But it's not that like, oh, this is the time the time to start, and then like as you get older you have an increasing inability. No, it's up to, as long as you don't have like dementia or Alzheimer's or some other like memory thing that you develop later, if your brain is still functioning normally, obviously it's going to be a little different as you get older, but it's more like, say, an 80, 90-year-old who has a brain in good health is the base level of skill development, and then the younger you get, the more of a multiplier you have. That's how I look at it. So I look at it the other way. This is the bottom. The oldest age is the bottom, because the average person can learn any skill they want. So when obviously it is exponential. So as you go from like 90 to 80, there's not going to be too much of a benefit being 80 versus 90. But if you go from 90 to 50, it's going to be a little bit more. And then the lower you go towards birth, the more drastic and exponential the multiplier becomes. So obviously, if you have been, playing piano since you were 3, you started learning when you were 3 and stuff, whether you have talent or not, it doesn't matter. The talent is another force multiplier, not a determinant, it's just a multiplier. But let's say you have no talent, you started piano when you were 3, and you really enjoy it, you really love it, you've been playing the piano all that time, then yeah, your brain is gonna make certain connections that another 3-year-old didn't do. That's gonna actually shape your brain moving forward for the rest of your life. And so that's just like extra bonus. It's not like this is needed. No, this is extra bonus. People need to like switch the way that they look at it. Anyway, Delio, you've never heard of Audacity? Come on. Oh, I've heard. Never mind. They said I've never. I was going to be like, come on, I've talked about it before. From Idausa. Yes, that's one way to spell it. Idausa. I remember how to spell his name because even though it's pronounced Idausa, in my head I say Idahosa because that's what it looks like, and so I remember how to spell it that way. But then I just remember to pronounce Idausa when I actually say it. But I've never used it. Yeah, you should use it. You should use it. Audacity is one of the, not absolutely required, but it's one of the key tools for pronunciation work. Don't slow down the exposure. Blah, 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 blah. I need to skip ahead. Skip the conversation. Critical period is kind of nonsense. Well, the critical period, as I was saying, it's a force multiplier. It's not that it's nonsense. It's just a force multiplier. But the idea that the critical period is a necessity, and then after a particular period, you have a limitation or an inability to learn something, I think that is nonsense, yes. Yeah, so Random Characters has been doing fantastic. As I mentioned earlier, he's a Patreon supporter, so at the higher level tier. So we have our meeting and whatnot, and yeah, it's some tough work as we explore more of this mouth posture stuff. But he's made a lot of progress for sure. But okay, Evo, welcome, Evo. Can you address the color diphthongs? Yeah, so you were asking about this the other day. What is the last vowel for you? We talked about via comments. I said it sounds like ill or a schwa-like sound. Can you do it slowly, maybe very slowly? We could try to hear it well. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I think it was in the extra practice for the L-colored vowels or something. With the L-colored vowels, for many of them, there's more than one way to do them. There's usually two ways. And it depends on how well you blend them or if you link them with like a small W or small Y. So I can say I'll with I'll. And what I do there is, if I do it that way, I'm basically just going from the start of I into ul. There's a little bit of closing towards it, but it's basically not there. Or if I say oil, oil. I'm not even going oi. I have that O, and then maybe a little bit of movement towards the I, but it's basically straight into oil, or oil. There's a little bit of a range there. Anyway, what was the other one? I think there was another one. Oil, ale. Instead of ale. So I'm in, which I'm doing it very open and enunciated there. The start of A is actually above e. You can actually drop it into e. That's another variation that you can do. But point is that you can go basically from e or straight into ul and sort of ignore the diphthong part. So again, that's one way to do it. If I more fully enunciate things, and I say I'll, that's probably what you're asking about. Oil, ale. So based on what I realized from the questions you were asking me the other day, there's also a little bit of a range here. You can get a little lazy. So it's like the diphthong is more fully pronunciated. I want to say pronunciated. That's not a word. Fully pronounced. And then you sort of lazily go into that half L, and you're not really going to hit that Y very much, a small Y. So if I say like ale, that's probably what you're hearing, where it's kind of like an I and sort of somewhere in there. But if I do the whole thing really clearly from the start of the diphthong to the end of the diphthong into the L, I'm going to hit that small Y. Ale. And there shouldn't be really any I or anything like that in there. So what you're picking up on is a common semi-lazy way to pronounce it, where we don't fully go into that half Y connector or that small Y connector. And see, this is messy. It makes sense because we're already talking about diphthongs. Now, technically, we're talking about a triphthong because the half L it functions very much like a vowel. Basically, is a vowel sound. That's why I call it the half L vowel sound, the dark L. And so whenever you have, the diphthongs by themselves, we tend to cut the start of the diphthong anyway. When I say I, unless I need to enunciate I'll just say, like, instead of I like it, I'll say I like even though I can go straight through the I might even not do that there. I just say the part. So we can already get reduction in the diphthong itself, and then we can get reduction in the transition from either continuing to drop the end of the diphthong going straight into the L, or go into the end of the diphthong and then sort of reduce or get lazy on the transition to the L from there. So you get all these little variations, little things. I wouldn't worry about it. It does not matter. It does not matter at all. As long as you, if you build the right mouth posture, that's not completely, but that's largely going to take care of itself, I think. But yeah, I'll go ahead and say those three with that particular variation a little slowly. So we have for ale. Let's see if it is a, yeah. Ale, ale, ale. See, as soon as I slow it down, it starts to break because they have to blend together. Part of that, you need enough speed to blend them together. I'll, oil, oil, oil. So just for reference there. Hope you're recording it, or there's a playback, so you can go mark the timestamp wherever we are now. I don't know. We have 20 minutes left. When he did the video on the oi color diphthong, one way was boil with a clear Y sound in the middle. The second sounded more like bo plus something. Well, it's not quite a clear Y. It's supposed to be a small Y. It's not boil. Boil. No, it's boil. Boil. It has to be a small Y. Yes, don't use the IPA. If you're going to use the IPA, at least put it between the things so we know. It's the Y sound, not the J sound. My question is, without the Y, what is exactly the second vowel? File, for example, could sound almost like there's no second. Yes, I already covered all that. Definitely not fall. Wait, hold on. Yeah, so I covered that in the course of what I was talking about. Dropping the end of the diphthong is one variation. But see, no, there's a difference between fall and file. Fall, file, fall, file. Fall uses ah. File uses ah, which only exists in the diphthongs a and I, or not a, I and ow. So it's a different start point. Some people say the first I part and connect with the half L. Well, sometimes blah, 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 without the Y, not Y as I said. Yeah, exactly. I has a front ah sound, and all has the ah in the back. Is the O in stereotype a schwa sound or an O diphthong as a no? Well, you could just say the O sound. The O can be a diphthong or a monophthong. It doesn't matter. Stereotype. If I say stereotype, stereo. So the O, I'm pretty sure gets secondary stress, which we know some weird things can happen with secondary stress, but generally it's not going to reduce. Stereotype. It's a stereotype. Some people might say it that way. To me, I don't think I would naturally say it that way. Maybe it seems just a little strange. So it's probably fine if you use a schwa, but I would definitely, if you ask me like, hey, is there an O in stereotype? I would say yes. So the fully announced, I can't speak today, guys. Pronunciated, announced, no, enunciated, fully enunciated or fully pronounced. Yeah, it's supposed to be an O. It's not a schwa. But maybe it can reduce your ISP throttling. Yeah, I guess so. I want to say some mean things, but I'm not going to about the ISP. When you say I don't use, would you link the don't to the word use? with an N as in I don't eat? Or would you just drop the N and T as in I don't like? Good question. So with I don't use, remember that there's always a range. It depends on how clearly you're not saying I don't use, 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 I don't flap the D, I don't use. Make that O a little bit more nasally. No N, no T. Just go straight into oo. Actually, it'd be U. I don't use. So there's a Y sound in front of the oo, right? Because it's use, not ooze. I don't use. 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 Okay. You would not say I don't use. Well, I guess you could do that. I don't use. I don't use. That sounds a little bit strange to me. It's possible, but remember, we see the letter oo. Letter oo. I cannot. The letter U. See, I'm getting things confused. My brain is just off today. We see the letter U. U is a sound, not a letter. We see the letter U, but it's not ooze, right? That would be OOZE, because English is cool like that. There's a Y sound, which is a consonant. So we can't do the NT plus vowel, but it doesn't in this case, probably because it's don't in particular. Like if I say I want you, I want you to do it. Yeah, I guess, because technically Y is a semi-vowel, so I guess sometimes it sounds okay, but don't use. I think we would more often either add the stop T or do the nasal O and drop the N and the T. Anyway, whatever. There's things that exist. You can also say I don't eat. I don't eat. I don't eat. I don't eat. Don't eat. Do a nasal O into E. That also can happen too, instead of don't eat. I don't like nasal O into L. So you can pretty much always apply that. The only time it probably wouldn't work is if the next word starts in an N, because then you have to pronounce that N. So if I say like I don't know, you can still do the nasal, but there's kind of no point. I don't know. I don't know. We probably won't make it nasal because we need the N for no. The best way to test somebody for a native, give them listen for an hour straight like a podcast. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so far behind. Where am I? I'm almost caught up. It is cold today. Just close my window. Miraculous Hub. Hello. Sorry, I'm a bit behind, so hope you haven't been here waiting too long before I acknowledge your existence, but hello. I don't speak American English. I speak British English. One piece. Okay. Well, thanks for stopping by. I guess. I don't know what that's supposed to do, but okay. Age is a number. Frustration is a room. Age is a number. Frustration is a room. I guess that makes sense. Kind of. Raphael Kruger girl sounds so good. Yeah. I did not expect that. Work hard, believe in yourself. Exactly. Hello, my dear teacher. Welcome, Habib. Welcome, welcome. Great tips for random characters. Okay, good. John, welcome, John. I think English has too many words. Most languages use around 5,000 words, but every day I come across, just come across another word in English when reading a book or watching something. Tips for advanced vocabulary. Good question. Yeah, vocabulary is kind of a pain. English does have too many words. Depending on who you ask and how they estimate it, English has up to 1 million words, like literally 1 million words. by more conservative estimates, there are at least 500,000 words. So, but that's including like really old words that nobody uses anymore and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And so it's a very bloated language with a long history of absorbing words from other languages and keeping old words that we don't really use anymore that are still technically in the language. And that's good because it gives us finer control of how to describe things. Not that you can't describe whatever you want in another language, but we have maybe more shades of nuance that we can give compared to some other languages. Same in French, I hear. French also has a lot of words, and they like to be very just specific with their descriptions. So we actually probably picked that up from French, from the French language. But advanced vocabulary, the main difference between advanced vocabulary and common vocabulary or beginner vocabulary is you're no longer worried about the common words. 2,000 most common words in a language in general will give you approximately like 80% of the everyday language in speech, at least. Writing tends to use a wider range, but it'll cover most of the writing as well. So that's an 80-20 principle. If you're a beginner, you don't have to do that. It's one technique. Some people like to learn the 2,000 most common words in a language, and then you're set for common words. Gives you a little jump start. But you can apply things at the beginner level, at the intermediate level, and at the advanced level. So regardless of your level, that aren't common vocabulary. And there are different ways to do this. One is to focus on things that are interesting to you. So if you are an engineer, right, we think, oh, engineer vocabulary is specific and advanced and all this stuff. It's like, but if you are an engineer, this is basic to you. It's part of who you are. It's part of your life. And so even as a beginner, you don't have to, but that's one thing you can do. You can start learning, how to talk about engineering things in English. Now, let's say if you're an engineer and you haven't done that yet, well, now's your time to jump into that more advanced vocabulary that you can use. So that's just one example, things that you're interested in, things that are relevant to you. You should always be focused on things that are interested to you in general, just as like a general rule or guiding principle. Reading, you're always going to find new words. Even me, as I would consider myself an educated native speaker, I could pick up a random book off a bookshelf and find a word that, like somewhere in the book, at least one word in the book that I probably, like I have a basic idea of what it is, but maybe like I'm not completely exactly sure what it means. Obviously it doesn't happen very often. And then if I'm reading, say, like Game of Thrones, where there's lots of like specific words for like parts of castles and like weapon terminology for parts of shields and this and that, whatever, I'm gonna have to look some things up because those aren't everyday words. I'm not familiar with those. So it really depends. But when you're at that advanced level, it seems to be harder, but it's actually easier because you just want to narrow down even more. So there's one technique, which is to build on what you already have. So for example, let's say, I'm just going to use a random easy example. Let's say the kitchen. Okay. So let's say all the basic words for kitchen, right? The word kitchen, stove, refrigerator, to cook, right? Maybe a couple food items, right? Apple, whatever, plate, right? So different things related to the kitchen, right? Now you can go in and you can zoom in on any of those or all of those. And then you can also practice combining them. So for example, you can go in, so let's say kitchen is our topic, and let's say cook. So the verb to cook. Okay, now that's great because there's many different ways to cook. Cook is an all-purpose verb for that action. So it doesn't matter if you are braising, roasting, microwaving, boiling, baking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not a specialist in cooking, and yet even as just an average native, I have been exposed to a certain range of cooking terms. There are some that even I don't know because I'm not in the cooking field, but and you don't have to go all the way down, but you can find some of the ones that are maybe a little more common. So they're sort of like, they're not super common words like kitchen or cook. They're a little, but they're still common, like boil. Boil is a common way of cooking. So you can cook the spaghetti noodles by boiling. So you can boil the spaghetti noodles. It's a more specific word where you have the thing in water. You make the water go until it bubbles a lot, and that's called boiling. So you're boiling the noodles. So you can take what you know and go into more specific versions of those words, and or build around those words. So in order to build around it, for example, you can say, let's see, can't think of anything off the top of my head. I always like to go to the basic example where, like, if you have like apple, red, round, crunchy, bite, chew, those are basic words. But if you learn apple, red, round, you say the apple is red, the apple is round. Very basic, right? This is very beginner level as example, but off the top of my head. And then you get a little more complicated. You say, I bite the apple, I bite the red apple, right? Or I chew the round apple, right? Things like that, where you're playing with these basic pieces and putting them together and starting to like get them into different combinations. You can apply that at the advanced level too, with, you know, like the boiling and whatever else. So that's what I would recommend as a technique. But I mean, focus on things you're interested in. The difficult thing is that there's a certain basic level of vocabulary that any native would have that covers a lot of things that are not necessarily common everyday words. Like, so ladle. A ladle is right, like if you have gravy and it's a particular type of spoon that has like a big dip, and you use it to get some gravy and put it on your food. That's not a common everyday word, but any native would know that word. That's the really difficult part, is getting to that like basic native level of vocabulary. And then how do you even identify and find those words? That's a hard thing. There's probably frequency dictionaries and stuff you can use for that. You don't have to go down that route, but it's just another idea. You can use frequency dictionaries. Because if the 2,000 most common gives you about 80 of everyday speech, if you go to the next 2,000 most common, you're going to start getting into like less common words that maybe aren't used in everyday speech, but they're still relatively common, and that can maybe help you fill in that gap. But if someone tells you it's impossible to sound like a native, just direct them to her YouTube channel and watch as they're proven wrong. Yeah, but they're going to say, oh, she started young, or oh, she's talented, or everybody's going to have an excuse. I could give perfect proof. I can say, look, this is like the magic golden proof that this is true. And if somebody has a belief, that belief is going to color their vision, and they're going to say, yeah, but this, because they have that belief. So if you believe you're too old because you believe you are. If you believe that you have to be super, super young, I mean, there is some truth to it. Obviously has a benefit. But if you believe like you can never, master a language if you don't start from the age of 2, that's your belief, and it's wrong. But you believe it. So even if I prove it wrong, some people are more open, and they'll maybe change their mind. That's true. But if somebody wants to believe something, especially if it's because it's their excuse for them not being able to do it, that's a very strong belief. They're going to continue to believe that, regardless of what you show them. So it is what it is. Time's the tip. It's just a perception that there's too many words, not so much coming from somebody with thousands of hours listening. Time is also very important. Yes. Books are the zone where you might get lost, but everyday content conversations. General reading is also a good tip for advancing your vocabulary. Just remember that you don't have to learn every single word that you find. If it keeps popping up and it's a word you don't know, definitely learn it. But if it's a word like, I don't know, I can't think of that word. It's in the back of my brain somewhere. But like, say, I don't know, hilt, right? You're reading a fantasy story and you see the word hilt. So that's like the hilt of a sword. You have the handle and then you have the hilt. I think that's the hilt. I'm pretty sure that's what the hilt is, the guard. See, I'm not even completely sure. And then you have the sword itself. That's not a word you have to learn. If you like fantasy stuff and you play D&D and you might need to use that word, then sure, learn it. But if you just want to read a fantasy book and you see the word hilt and you look it up and you're like, oh, this is what it is, you don't have to learn that. Like, you can skip it, make your life easier. But if you want to learn it, learn it. Okay. Definitely don't try to learn words on purpose if you're past intermediate. Well, that's a philosophy. I don't think there's a right or wrong there. I do think that you should generally try to absorb things, vocabulary and grammar. Some direct study and practice is extremely useful if used strategically at the right time. But part of the problem is when you're more advanced, sometimes general exposure is not enough. But you can go into niche. I can't talk. I said before, I'm done. I'm just done. You can go into more niche topics. Or say you listen to a podcast. I used engineering before. You listen to a podcast about engineering because you like engineering or you're an engineer or whatever. And you can get lots of exposure to that. And you don't necessarily have to deliberately look up words related to engineering. But there's no right or wrong there. You can apply some direct study where you actually look up vocabulary. Or you just try to get exposed within that niche content, or both. But context is very important, yes. She has some weird thing here and there, but sounds native. Yeah, definitely. Nobody says that to me, though. And when they do, they say I only sound good because I started young. See? Told you. I want you, but I don't use. What? I don't use. I want you, but I don't use. I assume based on the grammar, you're saying want to. That will not blend into ch, because if you blend it into ch, it would be understood as want you. So be careful with that. You can actually go, I don't, or it'll be not oh, ooh, I do eat, do eat. Okay, that surprised me. No. Well, okay, actually, no, sorry, I'm thinking positive. See, because it's spelling, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking like, oh, okay, so it's an O. No, wait, it's an oo because we're saying do. And then do eat. I'm thinking positive. That doesn't work. It doesn't work in the positive, of course. It has to be the negative because of the N. But yeah, if you say don't, you just make that nasal don't eat. I don't eat. Now again, the slower and more clearly you're speaking, the less it's going to work. Okay, you don't want to do that. But if you're speaking, the higher end of normal or whatever, I don't eat. I don't eat. I don't eat that. I don't eat that. You can even flap the D. I don't eat that. I don't eat that. I don't eat that. Possible. That's generally reserved for really fast speech. It doesn't have to be super fast speech, but it generally happens in fast speech. I wasn't even aware of that until a student asked me about it, because he's quite advanced and he noticed there was this weird thing happening, and I was like, huh. And so I played with it. I was like, yeah, that exists. It's just an extension of that negative, making the vowel nasal. Thanks for the tips. Random characters. No tips. No thanks for me. Random characters could just have the stream, I guess. Fine. Yeah, I know them. Okay. Obfuscation. Okay, we are out of time, unfortunately, guys. So I am going to very quickly try to run through the last tips here since we're pretty close. Yeah, I'm going to show that. That's okay. But no more comments, unless it's a goodbye, because I'm going to have to go. Obfuscation, promiscuous, circumvent, unsalvageable, wherewithal. These kind of advanced words, are too complicated for me. We don't use it in our native language. Yeah, because we have a lot of fancier words and simpler words. And this is partially due to like French influence on the language. So sometimes it actually creates a difference and sometimes it doesn't. It just makes it sound a little fancier. So like there's easy or not, there's hard and difficult. So hard comes from the Germanic original English. Difficult obviously comes from the French and Latin base. And so we have both. That particular case, hard and difficult. Difficult doesn't sound particularly fancy compared to hard. They're interchangeable. Like it doesn't matter. But then you have cases like, say, understanding, which would come from a German root, and comprehension, which would come from more of a Latin root. I think comprehension, which it's probably isn't the best example. Comprehension to me sounds a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more fancy than understanding. And we can kind of feel sometimes the difference between the Germanic root and the French root, but we don't notice that we don't know that that's why. An example where it creates a difference would be like cow. I think cow and beef. So the French word for cow is, I don't know the exact word, but it's something like beef. And then the Germanic word for cow is in English is cow, or it came from something similar to cow. I think in German it's like Kuh or something like that. But in modern English, we use beef specifically to refer to cow as food, which as a vegan I don't support, but you know, I feel weird talking about it. And then cow is used for the animal itself, not as, you know, like just an animal. So that's a case where we have the Germanic and the French, and they're related. They come from sort of the same period of influence where French had a big impact on English, but we use them for two slightly different things instead of them being synonyms. So yeah. So obfuscation, or if you obfuscate, you're kind of trying to like hide something, make it like harder to see or something like that. And so it sounds like a really fancy word. Yeah, or circumvent, a very basic word that the more basic the word or the fancier the word, the more nuance you can get. So circumvent, you can use avoid. I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying to circumvent that. But avoid doesn't carry some of the extra information that circumvent does. So circumvent might be a better word. But yeah, those higher level words can be kind of difficult to get. That's why you want a good base, and then you just build on that. So you look up, another thing is to look up synonyms, right? So if you say like synonyms of avoid, right? You know, avoid, you want to increase your expression. You go to a thesaurus, you look up avoid, and then you'll find all these words. And you want to pick maybe like the 2 or 3 most common. I would just start with one, really, and just like learn that and try to work it into your vocabulary and try to figure out the shade of difference. Look up lots of different examples to help build a feeling for like what is extra in that word, if anything, because natives will have a certain feeling around the words, and that takes lots of exposure to different examples. I like it because it's easier to link them with that weak W. Yeah, okay, circumvent, break, or blah, 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 blah. I'm going to skip random characters' comments because it's largely back and forth, and I don't have time right now. As a man believes in his heart, so is he. Everybody, so he is. Yeah, so he is. That would sound better. For those who believe, no proof is necessary. Or for those who believe, comma, no proof is necessary. For those who don't believe, comma, no proof is enough. Yeah, I've heard something like that. Perfect, exactly. Are you a crow? Yeah, I know, right? So goodbye. Yeah. I think the YouTube filter is avoiding random characters. That's why they call it just Google this term. Yeah, okay. Those words do sound fancy. I understand their meaning. Thanks for my native language. Obfuscation, for instance, is really... Yeah, exactly. Because if you speak a Romance language, a lot of these fancier words in English, you will already have in your language: Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, French. They don't always match up. And sometimes they're not necessarily fancy in English. They might, like compassion. That's just the word we have for compassion. Like it's the word. We don't have like a Germanic. I don't think we have a Germanic equivalent. We just use the word compassion. So compasión in Spanish, or compasão in Portuguese. I probably put a little schwa in there that I shouldn't have, but that's okay. Maybe in Italian, I don't know. Maybe it's like compassione or something like that. I don't really know much about Italian, but yeah, things don't always match up perfectly, but you'll get a lot of benefit from that. You're welcome, Delio. I'm glad it was fun. And yes, random characters, I guess, was kind of like a I don't even want to say a moderator. You weren't really moderating. You were kind of just like answering all the questions as I was answering them. And then a lot of the time you were right. Yeah, so that's good. But anyway, good. Thank you guys. I definitely have to go. 11 minutes late now. But next week, same time, Sunday, I am working on the phase 0 mouth posture lesson. If you don't know why I'm talking about phase 0, I have a recent comment on the community tab that you can read for more information. But I'm making the phase 0 lesson right now, and I'll be editing the phase 1 lesson very slightly. And it's going to be, as I said, there's going to be the single most important exercise in that phase 0 lesson, regardless of if you want to learn mouth posture or not. Just if you want to learn any language using any techniques, if pronunciation is important to you, there's a technique in that video that is going to be the key to mastering the pronunciation. You're welcome, John. And yeah, it's coming. So stay tuned. Hopefully in the next couple days, my watch is dead. I'll get that lesson out, and then we can move on from there. But I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.